Welcome back to Tarot by the Bay. I'm David. Okay, I just watched the vice president debate between Tim Walz and JD Vance. I'm recording this approximately 8 p.m. on October 1st, Pacific time. I will say JD Vance is very well spoken. He debates well, and he slides the lies and the misrepresentations. He slides them very nicely into his sentences and paragraphs. There's barely a click as it fits into place. Now the problem is that I pay attention to some of the facts here, and I could see the misrepresentations as they were coming through. But if you're not paying close attention, you're not going to notice it. But again, the other thing he was really good at was agreeing with Tim Walz and then sympathizing with Tim Walz because he's asked to do an impossible thing, which is defend Kamala Harris's horrible record. He slid in these things like he was a buddy and then just, throws a little poison out there. Tim Walz was also complimenting Vance, but he would just say, here's one thing we disagree on. Very straight up, straightforward Midwestern sensibility. There were some things that the strongest subject I saw Tim Walz talk on was the Affordable Care Act. And he lit up like a Christmas tree. The energy was flying off of him. And honestly, JD Vance didn't want any of that because Tim Walz, as the Three of Coins just popped up, Tim Walz was there from the planning of the ACA all the way through its inception, and with John McCain saving it during the Trump administration. He's seen the whole thing through, so he understands it really well. That's not a debate subject that JD Vance should want much of, and didn't spend much time on there. JD Vance in his closing speech said, we haven't talked about energy. Yeah, he only brought it up like a dozen times in there. Trump and JD Vance want to drill, baby, drill. The problem is that, and I watch one guy on TikTok who talks about oil drilling, and he knows what he's talking about. We're already maximized out there. To tap into new sources requires building new equipment, building more refinery capacity, and they're not, the stuff that they're not drilling right now is not as lucrative as the stuff they have there. So there's a diminishing returns on your profits with that, which is why they're not drilling there. Not only that, it wears down equipment and such things like that. That you might want, if equipment wears down on a main site, you want to take that new equipment, put in there, or maintain it as best you can, rather than putting it in a site that's not as lucrative. The other part is, I think part of oil drilling, if I understood him correctly, is natural gas is a byproduct, and right now natural gas prices are really, really low because we're drilling so much. There's a lot of natural gas that comes out of it. Drilling more will there's no market for the natural gas. It's already like cheap. I'm not explaining that well, but basically, long and short of it, what Trump wants to do, like triple the drilling, there's no infrastructure, there's no way to do it, and there's no way to do it in a short time frame that he wants. Bringing it back though, there was one part where I was jumping up and down on the couch, yelling, "Go get him, get him!" Just like I did when I was watching Biden, and that's when JD Vance was saying that on January 6th, Donald Trump told the crowd to peacefully protest. And then on January 20th, there was a peaceful transfer of power. Yeah, you're skipping that whole failed coup part. When Donald Trump beforehand says, come to the ellipse on January 6th, will be wild. And in his speech, he's saying, you better fight like hell or you won't have a country to live in. Oh, that's telling people to peacefully protest. Now, Tim Walz didn't call him out on those like I would have, because I have no problem beating a horse down to the ground, and when it's dead, keep beating it more and more, because repetition. Donald Trump has shown that. Keep repeating things until people believe it. Tim Walz just asked him, did Donald Trump win the election in 2020, yes or no? He said that, or did Donald Trump lose the election in 2020, yes or no? and J.D. Vance started talking about censorship of the Republicans and right-wing media. And he's about 5 to 10 seconds in. Tim Walz just says, that is a stunning non-admission. You know, I'm alarmed the fact that you can't say that Donald Trump lost the election in 2020. And that was the moment. I think when like Cash Peters saw like the podium collapsing, I think that was the moment, because that was the moment where Tim Walz showed to America that J.D. Vance will lie for Donald Trump. He will not be honest with you on something that was demonstrably provable. In the end, he didn't go after him after that. And he made his point. Again, David's the type of person that, you know, just keeps beating that same point down again and again and again. Drive it home. Subtlety is not my art. But let's go ahead, do a reading on the overall energy of how this vice presidential debate went, and then I want to ask specifically, how will the American public react to J.D. Vance's non-admission of Trump's victory or loss in the 2020 election? Entertainment purposes only. Central to the reading is the Four of Coins. I don't think a lot of people changed their minds. The people went in there, have their hard-held beliefs, and I think they probably left with that. There was a lot of information offered. There was a lot of information being offered, and between Vance and Tim Walz, there was a lot of politeness and courtesy. There wasn't a lot of angry fireworks, which falls into the Harris-Walz campaign of, you know, joy and bringing joy back as opposed to discord. But both candidates can be very guarded, but I think even the voting public is going to be guarded with the messages there. In the past, you got the Knight of Coins. A lot of the topics seem to talk about Kamala Harris's administration, even though she's the vice president and doesn't have a lot of power. But I don't think that's where we're going with this. I think this is just talking about the economy and America being... They were kind of focusing on, were you better off when Trump was the president, or were you better off when Kamala Harris was the president? That was kind of the underlying message here. Look at all these coins. Gosh, all these values. Current situation is the Ace of Pentacles. They both put forward what their values were. They talked about, J.D. Vance talked about drilling and oil and energy and energy and energy and energy and more energy, and Kamala Harris's inflation and more energy, and the southern border and energy. And Tim Walz was talking about things that would help everyday people. He didn't hit on Project 2025 nearly as often as I thought he would. He only brought it up like once or twice. Overarching energy is the King of Swords. Let's be realistic. Some people probably watched this. Most people probably didn't. They're not into J.D. Vance, so they're just not going to watch. It's the VP debate. I watched because I have this channel. If I didn't have this channel, I wouldn't have watched it either, to be honest. I was curious about Tim Walz. I wanted to see him debate and speak, but otherwise, yeah, I would have recorded these videos earlier and had another hour and a half back in my life. The lesson to be learned is the people that want the hour and a half back in their life. I don't know if anybody really got their... if this really moved the needle one way or another. You know, we're 35 days out from the election, and I don't think either candidate gaffed horribly. Nobody really... J.D. Vance is a great speaker. Tim Walz has a way of reaching out to people and talking to people, you know, looking at the camera like he's looking into your living room talking to you. He's got a very approachable demeanor, and that might work with some people as well. J.D. Vance is very polished. You know, he put that Yale degree to good use, but I'm wondering if that's going to really appeal to the undecided voter. He's smooth talking. Is that what they want, or do they like the plain spoken guy? The outcome is the Seven of Cups. It's about your integrity, your visions, taking the good and the bad, and things along those lines. You know, in the end of the day, people watched it. I don't know if there was a lot of things that could move the needle. The only thing I saw really that made me think, wow, that could move the needle was Tim Walz calling out J.D. Vance and basically demanding whether he felt Donald Trump won or lost the election in 2020. You know, did Donald Trump win the election in 2020? Yes or no? Did Donald Trump lose the election in 2020? Yes or no? I think he said Donald Trump lose the election. And J.D. Vance couldn't answer it. Or not that he couldn't. He refused to answer the question. And, you know, if somebody stayed to that all the way to the end there and they were intrigued and that part came up, what's that going to say? I think that was the only thing that J.D. Vance got caught out on and was exposed and vulnerable, and Tim Walz got blood with that one. All right. How did the public view J.D. Vance's performance for Carter? King of Swords, you know, intelligent guy. The hillbilly brawl card. He's real smart for a hillbilly. You know, they're thinking about, okay, you know, who is this guy? You know, he's really smart. He seems to have a lot of money. How did he get there? You know, he's a hillbilly who's now, you know, hanging around with a billionaire. You know, he's kind of a rags to riches story, and people might be intrigued, like, how did he get there? How do I do something like that? Well, folks, you go to Harvard and you meet a gay billionaire who takes you under his wing and he mentors you. That's how you get there. You up for it? I don't know what major you have to study in to get there, but hey, you know, good luck. I mean, again, not bad cards at all for J.D. Vance. And I think he came across well. And now I came upstairs and mentioned to Michelle, yeah, J.D. Vance is a good debater. And she goes, yeah, that's what I was taking from it. She only listened to it briefly, but she could hear his delivery and stuff. He did a really good job. Now, I was about to say, there's nothing Trump should be upset about with J.D. Vance's performance. Trump might be impressed with J.D. Vance. Trump may be worried about J.D. Vance, because if he comes across as that articulate, that's going to worry Trump, because Trump is just, you know, a word slurring, you know, single syllable using moron. Sorry, using name calling there, but he's not a bright guy. He communicates very simply, and J.D. Vance speaks eloquently. That's, you got a beer drinker and a fine wine. You know, there's not a lot of overlap in there. Okay, let's look at Tim Walz. How did the audience take away with Tim Walz here? Kept getting, you know, fear cards or heartbreak betrayal cards. Let's see how things come in here. Tim Walz, Knight of Wands. Nope. Well thought out. Talks slow, but gets his ideas across. You know, a planner. He's a guy who's a planner. You have to be when you're a governor. You know, guy that works hard. He used a lot of examples about Minnesota, the things that Minnesota is doing well. So, talking about his economy. Very strong sense of justice. Social justice, law and order justice. There's a big justice card. There's a big, you know, there's a real component with Tim Walz that the audience is picking up on. And there's that disappointment card again. Maybe the folks that were watching it that were expecting fireworks like Harris and Trump might be disappointed that we didn't get that. And that, you know, Tim Walz isn't as dynamic a speaker as Kamala Harris or J.D. Vance. But he wasn't bad either. They're just two different types. But, you know, broadcasting for everybody to see. Tim Walz comes across as fair and balanced. I think I would put it like that. Just fair and balanced. He's hardworking. He gets his points across. And he doesn't overcomplicate things. It looks like one of his gifts is that he has a really nice way of taking a somewhat complicated subject and simplifying it that you can understand it without dumbing it down to the point that it's not really accurate or true. It's a nice gift. Okay, now, one of the last things I want to talk about, though, is the moment where J.D. Vance refused to acknowledge Trump's loss in the 2020 election, and Tim Walz calling him out on it in a very... It was probably the starkest contrast, challenging moment. And even then, it wasn't overly emotional. Like there was no yelling or screaming or anything like that. It was really just a very matter-of-fact, straightforward question. Give me a yes or a no. You know, that's the major Sergeant Major coming out in Tim Walz with that question. How did the collective take to that? For Carter. It's not about Trump, but it's about Trump. The devil card. You know who the master is. Two of Wands. The Tower. Worst moment of the night in the celebration. Yeah, J.D. Vance's non-answer. No good. He has some very simple question about the insurrection. Donald Trump in the insurrection. And did he win or lose the election? J.D. Vance refused to answer the question. He answered a bunch of different stuff, but not the question being asked. That was his one crash and burn moment. And the people that were still there saw it. And I can assure you, the people in my household that were watching it, namely me, were celebrating it. Because it's like, you got the question out there. And people got to see who J.D. Vance is going to serve. He's not going to serve the people. He's going to serve Donald Trump. And I think that moment right there was an undoing. And I don't think it's going to be huge numbers, but it puts it out there. It's also a sound bite, right? That's going to be the sound bite of that whole debate. When they play back the questions and things like that, nobody's going to remember what Tim Walz said about the Affordable Care Act, or the 20 times that J.D. Vance talked about drilling and Kamala Harris not drilling enough and things along those lines. Those are all boring. Nobody cares. When they're being nice to each other and complimenting each other, they're not going to show that. Nobody cares. They want the drama. There was only one drama moment, and that was when J.D. Vance said that Donald Trump told the protesters to peacefully protest, and on January 20th, there was a peaceful transfer of power, and skipping the whole insurrection part and basically lying about what Donald Trump really told the folks at the Ellipse. And again, the moment right there, J.D. Vance saying, "Oh, he told them to peacefully protest, and there was a peaceful transfer of power on the 20th." The next cut, they'll just cut it right there and edit, and it's going to be Tim Walz looking at J.D. Vance. Did Donald Trump win or lose the 2020 election? Did he lose the 2020 election? And J.D. Vance is going to be like, censorship. What? And then there's going to be that clip where Tim Walz just says, "I'm alarmed by his inability to answer that question." That's your soundbite. That's the winner. That's the winner of the debate. That's the dogs and cats moment. It's not as big as the dog and cats moment, but it's more real than the dogs and cats moment. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching this video and supporting my channel. I appreciate it. I hope you found this reading insightful. It is for entertainment purposes only, and I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.